Hey everybody, welcome to Ask Dr. Testosterone, starring Dr. George Julianos. And this week we have a very special guest. Please welcome the host of SuperHuman Radio, the longest running health, fitness, and anti-aging podcast in the world, over 15 years in continuous production, Carl Lanore. How are you, Carl?
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Hi, Carl. Thank you for coming. Of course, I owe you this invitation since I've been hosted 5 times by you since 2016. We met in Columbus, and I hope to meet you next March, hopefully, after this nightmare is over.
I know. We'll see. We have to show up at the Arnold with plastic bags over us.
Some people need a bag over their head. Yeah.
I want to talk with you about a subject that you used to mention about the male extinction, and the low testosterone. I mean, it's a fact that men now become more metrosexual, less of a man, and perhaps this is something between men and gay people. But anyway, low testosterone is a fact. Hypogonadism is a fact. Low fertility also is a fact. And there is also a wave of anti-testosterone propaganda, from physicians, from insurance companies, from lawyers, for very prejudiced. So, as you well said, there is a extinction of male creature, species. So we should talk about this because it's a fact, and very few people are aware. And actually, many men have low testosterone that have no clue about it. They just abuse Viagra, SSRIs, which is not solving the problem for where it starts,
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to say that there's no conspiracy out there. It's not like there are people in government or in industry that are saying, what can we do? Can I curse on this show?
No. Try to, if we can keep the F-bombs under like a total of 25, I think we're good.
Yeah, no, if we can really F men up, let's do that. Let's figure out a way to it's not on purpose. What's happening is, from an evolutionary perspective, men, I'm going to say something's going to piss women off, really. But men are a more valuable species than women when it comes to, from an evolutionary perspective, because as a species, we have one objective, and that is offspring, to keep the trajectory of the species growing. Every species does that, from cockroaches to everything. It's all about make babies and then get off the planet. And the idea is to make multiple of babies. So when we are removed, we're one, but we leave 5 behind, and we keep doing this, and the species progresses. And that's the only edict we have as a species, every species. Mm-hmm. And from when you look at things from that, if you understand, you don't get all twisted and woke about what I'm saying, and you understand that this is really evolution. This is it. This isn't bullshit. This is real science. Not science you can twist around and make it whatever you want. From that perspective, men are the most important, because we look, anybody deer hunt, you see 60 doe, you see 1 buck. Why? Because he can impregnate all 60 of them. Mm. So we're much more valuable from that standpoint when we look at ourselves as a species. As a result, we really drive evolution. But women drive what evolution puts out there. So in other words, men pursue and women choose. Women choose men based on the values they have that they want endowed in their children. If they want big, strong men, they're going to, or babies, they're going to find the guy who's big and strong. If they want intellectual types, they're going to find an intellectual guy to help them with their babies. But when you look at evolution in general, we really have the most value, because we can make many, many more babies from what we do than a woman can have, even in her lifetime. So when you first look at that, you realize that people need to pay attention to what's going on with men today. Now, to answer your question more directly, and what they should be paying attention to, is that we are suffering more than the female species from what is being done in our environment today. Xenoestrogens and androgens and phytoestrogen androgens, and then the general hormone mimicking cascade of crap in our environment today Even glyphosate is now been identified as not only a cancer-producing agent leading to Parkinson's disease, but it's a hormonal mimicking agent too that is helping to stimulate some of these cancers on a push-pull basis. So you see who is Hims and Blue Chew and all these companies, who are they appealing to? Are they appealing to guys like me in my 60s? No, they're advertising to young men in their 30s and 40s who can't get erections anymore. Why is that important? You've got to go back to evolution. If you agree that the number one job of the species is procreate and increase the trajectory of the species, then sex, intercourse, reproduction is our only job. Everything else is incidental. And when a man can't get an erection, it means a couple things. It means that from a health perspective, his body already knows he won't be around to raise these children. So it shuts off the reproductive mechanism. We see this in women, especially female bodybuilders. When they're coming into a competition, they're starving themselves to get lean, which is even more difficult for a woman than it is for a man, because she's programmed not to be lean because she has to make a baby. So what happens to women when they start to go on a cut? Around that midway through a cut, they lose their period. They become amenorrheic. Why? Because their body.
Low estrogens.
What's that?
No, low estrogens. Yes.
Oh, but it's not. But that's technically that's what's happening. But from a grander scale, from the 30,000-foot view down, what's happening is their body is saying, in simplest terms, you're starving. You can't afford to have a baby. You can't feed yourself.
Yeah.
We're shutting that shit off. We don't want you to act, because the body doesn't know, oh, she's just prepping for a competition. The body thinks, oh, this is one of those famines that we've lived through the past couple million years.
Yeah, you got a point, Carl. But speaking about who's more valuable, we know that lesbians, women that don't want to date men, they can have an offspring if you go to the sperm bank, take the spermatozoa and fertilize themselves. But we cannot without having a uterus. So even single mother women, they can still have babies just by picking a random sperm.
But George, evolution never thought we would freeze sperm and keep it in test tubes. Like there's a lot of, look, right now, I'm going to say something that's going to piss people off, but it's the truth. Had we let this virus run its course, who would it have taken out of the population? The old and the sick.
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily, but yes.
No. Mostly it would have been the old and the sick. Look at all the people that died in Italy.
Okay,
it's old people.
The Darwin's theory, yeah.
These viruses have probably been around for millions of years, and they cull the herd. They tease out the weak, the dependent, the non-producers. And because we saw this if you're a fan of history like I am, and you look at the Black Plague, right after the Black Plague, what happened? Tens of millions of people died around the world. Shortly thereafter, we had a renaissance. Why? Because all of these resources became available to a smaller group of people that were able to survive this plague, which, by the way, that plague is an evolutionary selection pressure, because the people who survive the plague won't ever die from the plague again, and neither will their offspring, because herd immunity is passed on from mother to child. So when you look at what's going on right now with men, it should worry everybody. It should worry everybody. And what's going on is not a conspiracy. There's not a desire to make men more feminine, but it is a byproduct of greed, because companies like Monsanto don't give a shit. All they care about is corporate profits and board of directors. And there's evidence now, because of Dr. Anthony Samsel and the Freedom of Information Act. Monsanto knew glyphosate was horrible before they launched it. They even one of their studies, they just did it for 3 months, that showed the changes in mitochondrial damage from glyphosate, because at 4 months it was evident. Interesting that they stopped at 3, because they probably did a preliminary study and thought, well, if we just go to 3 months, we don't see this stuff. Let's just do it for 3 months. And the FDA said, okay, that's good.
I want to mention something, because I want both of your opinions on this. I was reading something that was very disturbing, that in the past 40 years, sperm count has gone down 30% in men, which over the long term, I don't know how long it would take, would eventually make our species extinct. And one of the reasons, they're trying to figure out, is it soy, is it this and that? And something that seems to be a strong link, and you guys can comment, is there are these chemicals that are in like 75% of household items and just lying around your house, called EDCs, endocrine disruptive chemicals. Yeah. So we have an entire generation or a couple of generations of males now with much less sperm, much less active sperm. Their testosterone levels are down. They did something like they measured the distance between the perineum is shorter or longer or something. Right. It's very, very frightening, because that's 40 years. That's a blip. That's like a blink in the eye in terms of the length of a species. But to have that kind of an impact on our fertility, and now it used to be that in cases where couples couldn't have a baby, it was almost always the woman, her body, that was responsible. Now they're seeing it in at least 25% of all couples that can't conceive. It's because of the man's lack of fertility. I found that just all terrifying. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, George.
Yeah, Carl.
Oh, okay. All right. So thank you. So these are the hormone mimicking components that I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. The Rockefeller Foundation has an office in Manhattan called the Population Academy, but what they do is they study epidemiology on a population basis. And back in 2009, they published a study on something called phthalates, PHTH, phthalates. Phthalates are used in flexible plastics like saran wrap, but phthalates are also used in deodorizers, like these sprays that you spray in your house to make it smell like pine. They use the phthalates to encapsulate the scent until it's sprayed out in the air, and then it releases it. Well, phthalates are called anti-androgens. And the reason they're called anti-androgens is because they have an affinity to the androgen receptor that is stronger than any androgen in your body. I think, if I remember the study, it was 15 times stronger than DHT. And why DHT is important in a second, because I'm going to lead into another lightning rod that I'm going to touch. But what they determined was these phthalates, they bind to the androgen receptor, they block testosterone, they block DHT, they block DHEA, they block the androgens from activating. And remember, the receptor is a mosaic. It's like a concave mushroom, and it's got little domains in it. And activating each of those domains does something different. This is why we have selective androgen receptor modulators, because SERMs only activate some components of that receptor. But testosterone, DHT, they activate the entire receptor, which for some reason modern medicine thinks is a bad thing. But, again, 2 million years seems to be better off being right. So what's happening is these phthalates compromise the androgen receptor. Testosterone can't get in. And so the androgens can't do their intended jobs because they're being blocked, and the phthalates aren't activating the right portions of the receptor to get an androgenic response out of the receptor. So men are basically screwed, and this is why we have low testosterone, low libido in guys that are 30 years old. But why is this also important? So there are two scientists in Sweden that won't come on my show. I've asked them for years. They have published 2 good studies done with rodents where they actually created homosexual rodents. Here's how they do it. So the first trimester, the genitalia are formed, whether or not you're going to have a vagina or a penis. And those are stimulated predominantly by DHT.
Yes.
DHT makes the vagina a penis.
Defines the sex.
Right. So when DHT is present properly at the proper amounts in a woman who's got a baby in her in that first trimester, she's going to end up having a boy. But then what happens is at the third trimester, remember the brain forms last. In the third trimester, if all of a sudden this woman decides, you know, I'm going to start eating soy lattes every day, and I'm going to start eating soy, I'm going to go vegan, and I'm going to eat all this soy, and all you have is this influence of these phytoestrogens in the third trimester, now you have the sexual preference of a woman with the genitalia of a man, and now you have a man who's attracted to other men.
So you believe gays are affected? I mean, they are born genetically because of the eating habits of the mothers?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They've proven it. They did 2 studies with ovariectomized rodents. And in both times they were able to duplicate it. They had male rodents that were attracted to other male rodents. They had female rodents that were attracted to other female rodents by manipulating the hormonal milieu during that 9-month gestation period. The first 3 months for the genitalia, the last 3 months for the brain, and they can make them. They can make homosexual rodents. Now, when I talk about this pisses people off. Because the people on the religious side of, no, they just need more Jesus and they'll stop that. Look, I'm going to say something.
Oh, we know priests that are gays. Come on, this is not affected by religion.
Well, but I mean, I have never imagined, gee, I wonder what it would feel like to have a penis in me. You're either wired that way or you're not. You don't wake up one day and think, well, I'm gonna switch my hairstyle and I'm gonna start being homosexual. You can't do it.
I believe, Carl, is not just genetics, but also the environmental stuff, you know, which is phenotype. So perhaps it's not expressed if a gay is living in a very strict environment. You know, I believe so also. So the external factors and some circumstances may express this genotype of the what you said now.
Yeah, but you got to be wired that way first, George. I see what you're saying. So if a gay guy grows up back in the day, a lot of gay guys became priests because they felt bad about their desire to be with other men. And they especially if they're ethnic Italian or Greek, they're viewed as weak men. And so they suppressed it for as long as they could, and then they went into and became priests because they felt like, well, if I become a priest, I won't have these desires. So they suppress it. You're right. And in today's environment, it's definitely less suppressed. In fact, it's applauded, it's accepted, and I have no problem with that either. I don't give a shit who you love.
I've met gay people who started being straight and then become bisexual and then homosexual. So it's not straight from the beginning being gay, you know. But they're wired that way, and it's hormonal. And like these two studies show, if I can manufacture male rodents that want to copulate with other male rodents consistently twice in a row, then now we have to pay attention to the science. And why? So giving a gay testosterone will make him less of a gay? I don't think so.
No. Once your brain is wired that way, George, once it's wired that way, that's it. That's who you are. And that's why this discussion about phthalates and this discussion about endocrine disruptors is so important, because it's not just men that are being damaged by our environment today, but it's this whole gender dysphoria, this blurring of gender line. This is all a result of our environment. This is a result of our environment. These people are who they are. They really are. They're wired that way, but they're who they are because their mother was exposed to this stuff during the pregnancy.
If you're against gender dysphoria, they're gonna call you homophobic, you know, obviously. So answering to Ron's question, I believe xenoestrogens. I remember John Fraser used to say that plastic bottles, when exposed to the sun, release xenoestrogens that affect sperm count. Also, stress affects, and cortisol affect, and prolactin, of course, affect testosterone. And we have to admit that anabolic androgenic steroids for the past 2 decades or 3 decades, they have been widely used that contribute also to low fertility in the youth, you know, progressively, of course, from the late 20s until the late 30s when somebody wants to have a family. So it's multifactorial, but it's a fact that my grandmother used to conceive easily at the goods, at the fields when she went every day. You know, they were doing it standing position for 5 minutes, and they're going to have babies in a heartbeat. Now they're trying 6 and 12 months in order to conceive, and then you go to a gynecologist, and the IVFs have risen a lot. So it's very low fertility in men, of course, and in women, but it's a problem now. They spend thousands of dollars to have a baby.
There's something else that's very worrisome too, and that is that all of these chemicals cause transgenerational epigenetic changes in offspring, even if the offspring aren't exposed.
Epigenetics means you change your DNA.
Well, you don't change your DNA as much.
But you affect the way it's expressed.
Yes. And so what's happening now is we're seeing children, like there's a couple good studies showing Vietnam vets who are exposed to those harsh herbicides that we know cause cancer today, actually passed some of the genetic mutations onto their children through their germline, through their sperm. See, it was always thought that the mom was the only one that could influence the fetus, and now we know that's not true. And let me give you an example of an epigenetic effect. Look at the countries that have survived famine, Ireland and Russia. They have the highest rates of alcoholism and depression. And it's because the epigenetic changes from the people who survived those famines and then had children, and they had children, is still dominant in their offspring. Because remember, epigenetics is RAM memory, right? In other words, what do I need for these tasks right now? Let me keep it off my hard drive and where it's accessible right away. So what happens is when the parent survives an event, it's transcribed epigenetically into the parent, and it's passed along to the child to protect the child should the child ever be exposed to that event. And epigenetics is so much more sophisticated than just health outcomes. For instance, there's a well-done study that shows that they took male rodents and they did like a Pavlovian type thing with them. They gave them the smell of cherry and they shocked them. And they did this for like months, right? Okay. Then they stopped and they put those rodents back into a general population of rodents where they mated. And then they took their offspring, male or female, and whenever their offspring smelled cherry, they became frantic. Now you'd say, now how could that event that happened to the father, a different generation, be because epigenetics is actually inherited intelligence as well. So the reason a baby deer knows to fear humans really as soon as it's able to walk is because epigenetically that fear has been passed on from the mother and the father. So when we talk about epigenetics, we have to stop being so narrow and think, oh, this is just affecting the health outcome. This affects the entire outcome of the species and how it views its life moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious, do we face the extinction of our species eventually if this trend continues?
If you're a fan of history, and I'm actually getting ready to have a good professor on the show to talk about this. If you're a fan of history, buy a book on Rome, the demise of the Roman Empire. And what you will see is what's going on in the United States right now. When Rome disappeared, the people didn't die off. They voted with their feet. They went to other places. They're like, F this, I'm not staying here where they're taxing us. They've got all this crazy nonsense going on. There's all this chaos going on. People were like, we're not living here anymore. And they moved out of Rome. And that's why Rome collapsed. But if you look at the hallmarks of what happened in Rome, they started this whole, they started the whole homosexual thing it flourished and it became out in the open. Young male politicians were having young boys to have sex with. They started to overtax the people and did crazy stuff with the money. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? So if you're a fan of history, this has happened before. Now, the species will always do what it needs to do to protect itself. Because again, that's job one. So we're always going to have people who are going to find an alternate route in their lives. And I would say suggest to you that that is our audience, right? We work out. Muscle is important to us. Strength is important to us. Sleep is important to us. An evolutionary diet is important to us. We eat a lot of meat. So what I think is going to happen in about 300 to 500 years, all these people, like everybody likes to call them sheeple, but they really are. All these people who are following the wrong information, they're not going to have children, or their children are not going to have children, and we're going to erase them from the gene pool. And what's going to come out the other? This is, people think evolution stopped after Darwin. What we are viewing evolution and selection pressures right now, and those who survive the next 300 to 500 years, we will end up populating the globe or repopulating the globe with new people. And those people will have survived because they're not easily fooled. They understand the value of good sleep and the value of physical culture and all these things. They're going to be the ones that are left because all these other people are going to be gone. I just published something on Facebook this morning that during the pandemic, the rate of type 2 diabetes in 12-year-olds and under has doubled. Those kids won't have children. Wow. They will end up being infertile. They won't have the money to go to a fertility clinic. Their genes will stop with them.
Yeah, you know, Carl, there's something else interesting with women. I've seen these trends being talked about. I don't know if there's any science, any actual studies to back this up, but women are choosing now just the very top % of men, which to an extent it's always been that way. But I mean, I see studies that a full 1/3 of 29-year-old men haven't had sex since they were 18. Either they've never had sex or they haven't had sex in that span of time. So we're seeing women choosing the taller, athletic, good-looking, square-jawed guys, and those guys have multiple female partners, and a lot of men now have no partners. Young men, especially. There's a whole term. I don't know if are you familiar with the term incel?
No.
Okay, so incel stands for involuntarily celibate, and it's describing a growing population of young men who they want to be having sex with women, they want to have a girlfriend or whatever, or lovers, but the women they're passing by most of these men, and they're choosing a very small percentage of the elite men, and they would rather share an alpha than own a beta, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I believe that way women can smell the low testosterone from the skin or the high testosterone, and then she's aroused
when they kiss.
Sorry?
When they kiss.
When they kiss.
Wow.
There's a study that shows that when women kiss, without realizing it, they can tell that the man has what they need to fill the gaps for their offspring.
Wow.
It's attraction. You know, we think Mother Nature, and I hate even calling it Mother Nature because it's not nature. It's evolution. It's perfect. Evolution is perfect. It works perfectly. But let me support what you just said, Ron. So if you had a magazine, which you do,
yeah,
but you're a niche, I'm a niche, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at mainstream magazines, their job is to sell magazines.
Yeah.
So how are they going to sell magazines if you and I are the niche? Are they going to tell us this, that, you know, the women are choosing the alpha males, that guys need to get their shit together and become alpha? No. They want to sell magazine subscriptions. Who are the largest mass of people? The dad bod guys. They want to be told that the dad bod is the thing.
Yeah.
But it's really not. And there was a study we talked about on the show that showed that they can track what you look at. And they were flashing pictures in front of women and asking them to pick the men that they were most attracted to. And the women lied. They lied. And here's why they lied: because they want to be part of the mainstream. They want to be part of and so that's a whole nother problem with our population. But they could tell by the way the women's eyes tracked, the duration of time they looked at. When they put 4 men up and the guy with the abs and the pecs and the shoulders, that's who they looked at. They looked at first and the longest. And then they looked and they thought, well, and in their mind, they're probably thinking, well, I'm not going to get that guy. So yeah, I'll go for that guy.
Yeah.
It's really sad what's happening today. The media is actually, and I've said this for the past decade, the new evolutionary selection pressure is not famine. It's not the Ice Age. It's where you get your information from. It's the information you choose to believe. If you think the vegan diet is the right way and you're a vegan and you raise your kids vegan, you're gone. You're not going to be here 100 years from now. You're not. Your kids are going to be weak and frail. They're going to have disease states because the vegan diet is a horrible diet. I'm sorry if you're a vegan out there and you're going to tell me, yeah, but I build muscle on vegan. I don't want to hear about that. The vegan diet is eating a lot of food and still being nutritionally deficient.
Yeah.
That's what the vegan diet is. But my point is that the new selection pressure is the information you choose to live your life by, and that your children will live their lives by.
Very interesting. Wow.
So you believe, Carl, that the TRT wave will be promising to create more men, waken them up, and become alpha males? And we know, of course, that hypogonadism is a fact. So by treating this by the exogenous use of testosterone and reversing this prejudice and skepticism from the medical society, you believe that this can be expressed more and, perhaps reverse this male extinction issue that we're talking about?
I don't think so. I actually think what's going to happen is because of medical interventions, allowing people who shouldn't be having offspring to have offspring. At some point in time, that's going to diminish. That's going to go away because their offspring, at some point in time, someone's not going to have a baby, and it's going to stop there. So I think that the medical intervention is a problem. It's the opposite of culling the herd. If you can't have babies, you shouldn't have babies. That's it. I'm sorry to say that. There's a lot of people out there, but here's the difference. If you can't have a baby, look at why you can't have a baby. It's you probably have a horrible.
Mainly the financial, less babies are made by the new couples because of financial issues. Also fertility, but my grandmother used to starve and make 4 children, 100 years ago. And now they have everything. They barely have 1 child,
Yeah.
They are preoccupied with other things, of course, yes. Very demanding lifestyle.
The medical intervention to keep people alive while people are doing things to destroy their lives is a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who will disagree with me because they're taking metformin and insulin and all these other things to keep themselves alive. And they're like, well, I don't want to die. Well, there is another alternative. It takes a little bit longer, but get your fucking shit together. Come on, stop moving. Could you imagine if this government had taken the opportunity for this pandemic to say the weak and the sick are the ones that are most threatened by this. So let's get Arnold Schwarzenegger back and let's start the president.
It takes time for that, though. It takes time.
Right. No, they want something today. Just give me something.
Yeah, they don't want to bust their asses.
This is kind of related, but have either one of you seen a movie called Idiocracy?
Fucking A. I think it's an amazing Idiocracy and WALL-E are 2 must-watch movies because these 2 movies predict our outcome if we stay on this path.
Yeah. For anyone who hasn't seen Idiocracy, it's a comedy with Luke Wilson. And in the future, because they show what the trends in the current time are, the educated, wealthy couples, they can't conceive or they're not having kids. And then they show like trailer parks and they're popping out babies left and right. Yeah. So this is supposed to be America like 100 years in the future where the average person is a complete moron and intelligent people are extremely rare because they didn't procreate.
Well, which leads me to this question. What is it about human success that says once you're a success, you can do all of these high-risk things to destroy yourself as rewards? When you see people work their whole lives and then they come into money and they have a lot of success. They start doing cocaine and they start drinking a lot and they start doing stuff that is not good for them and erodes their health. It's an amazing phenomenon to me because when you look at successful people, they become self-destructive for some reason.
So as Dalai Lama said, the modern human spends his youth and ruins his health in order to make money. And after he spends that money in order to restore and fix his health, so it's counterproductive one against the other.
Yeah.
It's vanity,
Yeah, it is.
So male extinction. Yeah, you know, I guess it's good we didn't get into the whole cultural thing, because that's a whole, gosh, we could go on all day. And I feel like that's more in the USA than around the world. I think the cultural movement against toxic masculinity and all that, I don't see a lot of that being reported around the world. It seems to be more of a like American phenomenon, where they're trying to suppress masculinity. And you know, we used to let boys be boys, and now you can't play war, you can't have toy guns, and you know, you can't be dominant, and everyone's got to be the same, and there are no more genders. And it's very disturbing. You know, I'm almost 52, and it's just, for this shift to happen in such a short time, to me it's terrifying that we've come.
But that's political. See, what's being done by politicians in the United States, and I can't speak for other countries, but it may be other countries too. So becoming a politician has been the new path to stardom and fame and money. It isn't what it used to be about public service. Every one of these politicians we have today in the United States started being a politician virtually broke, right? And became multimillionaires while they were politicians. I mean, the analogy to that would be a guy who becomes a priest, but then he becomes a pimp too, and he uses his priestdom to cover for the fact that he's pimping out the nuns. You know what I mean? It's like, it's horrible. It's horrible what's being done. But if you're a politician, you don't want the power in any country is in the base, and the base is the people. You know, it's like a pack of hyenas is scared shitless of one lioness because of the lioness's reputation. But the reality is, if they could communicate and go, come on, if we all run in there and bite her at the same time, she can't do anything. They don't want us to think that way. The politicians don't want people to understand that they actually have the power to change the outcomes of a lot of stuff. So what the politicians do is they throw these crumbs to keep us fighting and divided. And so they want to divide. So if we're divided around race, we're divided around sexuality, we're divided. They want to keep us divided, because if we're busy bickering, they do shit that we don't see. And meanwhile, everything they do, I don't care who it is, everything they do is for self-preservation, self-empowerment, and self-riches. That's all they do. They're not doing things to make the country better. Anytime they do this to make the country better, they take this and put it into their pork pie projects that they want to give people money. And the worst part is, if somebody said to me, Carl, here's a magic wand, you can change only one thing about politics, what would you change that could have the greatest effect in all political arenas? What I would want to do is take away sovereign immunity. If you're a politician and you do something wrong, you go to fucking jail for it. See, right now, politicians, they do shit like sell the country out to companies like Monsanto, and then they retire and they get a golden parachute retirement and they go on. But me and you, if we perpetrated something like that, we go to jail. We have to do away with sovereign immunity, so that when a politician makes a decision as a politician, they understand that if it comes out that they did that for self-empowerment, you know, self-preservation, then they go to jail. Nobody ever goes to jail. Nobody ever goes to jail. I mean, shit, I could go to jail for not paying a bunch of parking tickets for a few years.
That's true.
Because the law system also is corrupted, you know, it covers them.
Of course. Of course. You know, everybody likes to say, oh yeah, the fox is guarding the hen house. Bullshit. The fox owns the hen house now. And the fox makes the hens do what he wants them to do before he eats them. That's what politics is today.
So Carl, let me ask you, where is this world going to about male and men? Are we going to see macho men 50 years from now?
Yes.
The old-fashioned male with a hairy chest, you know, and the mustache? Or we're going to see metrosexual shaved thorax, you know, and it would be bragging about the gay pride, you know, and perhaps not being straight, but being something alternative would be cool, let's say.
I think
and then
that
they call you homophobic.
I don't think those phenomenons are mutually exclusive. I think we're going to continue to see homosexual men and women because of the environment. The environment is not going to get cleaned up in 50 years. So we're going to continue to see this. And again, because of epigenetic, transgenerational epigenetic effects, we're going to continue to see this. And they're going to be part of the population. However, the attack on masculinity is completely different. And it's another one of these things that politicians do to keep us fighting amongst ourselves. That's going to go away. I predict it's going to go away. It's going to take years, because what's going to happen is the people who don't need medical intervention to stay alive and actually can thrive and be productive will be the ones that will populate the earth 500 years from now. So I don't think they're mutually exclusive, but I don't think we're going to see gay people just disappearing because of social constructs, because they are wired to be that way, and I respect that. God bless. I like big asses. You know what I mean? I'm Italian. I'm like wired that way. Something okay. So I'm wired that way, right? I'm always going to be that way, and I'm not going to change. Something in my brain attracts me to that. So I don't think that we're going to see gay people just go, oh, I guess we're really not gay. We were just influenced by the population.
But masculinity declines. And as Rick Collins said, the new generation children are preoccupied with PlayStation, with internet, they don't attend the gym, they don't eat healthy. So even though we are living an era of, when physical culture has been widely expressed, I believe this is going downhill because of the fact that the new generation is less athletic than the 80s
but that has nothing to do with homosexuality. There are lots
no. It's about the male extinction.
Yes. But
masculinity,
I think what you're going to see is, regardless of whether someone is straight or gay, I think they're going to become more athletic. They're going to become more conscious of physical culture.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
That's who's going to be here 500 years from now. Clearly.
And I don't think it's hormonal thing being a homosexual. You may have normal testosterone, but your sexual orientation is different. It's a matter of taste.
No, it's not a matter of taste. Testosterone, the presence of serum testosterone will not change the way a person is hardwired to be attracted and stimulated to one person of one sex or the other. The presence of testosterone will only influence their desire, libido, and their sexual performance, but they're still going to be attracted to guys if it's a homosexual guy, and she's going to be attracted to women if it's a homosexual woman. So I don't think that's going to be effective.
But when we stop using steroids after the PCT, not during GRT, of course, and estrogens go sky high, we don't want to hit on women,
Right.
So estrogens play a role in that, in order to block androgens, as they have an antagonistic effect, So I believe
that's just cutting down the sex drive. It doesn't change who you're attracted to. You just have less of a drive toward anything.
I'm not interested in hitting a woman.
Yes, and that's a great point that George makes. When guys have low testosterone, high estrogen, they're not magically attracted to guys. They're still attracted to women, but their performance changes.
Yeah.
That's perfect, because once the brain is hardwired for attraction, it's hardwired that way for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Wow,
I remember when I was abusing testosterone, I would hit on a woman and masturbate at the same time. I was super aroused because of the super physiological level of testosterone. Yes. And I wanted to have dirty sex,
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
All right, guys, we've been all over the place with this. We should continue this another time we should do it like a spin-off show. This has been really, really fun. Carl, thank you so much. I want you guys to check out his podcast. It is the longest running podcast. It's one of the longest running podcasts since there have been podcasts.
Right.
SuperHuman Radio on all the platforms. You can find Spotify and Apple, iTunes and all that good stuff. And he has a YouTube channel called SuperHuman Radio, correct?
Right. And the website is superhumanradio.net. So if you hate me for some of the things I've said, don't send it to Ron. Go to my website.
It's 16 years, right? 2005.
I'm in my 16th year right now.
Wow. Congratulations.
And I do 4 shows a week on average.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Because these are not like 2-minute podcast guys.
They're generally an hour to an hour and a half podcast.
Yeah. So Carl, thank you so much, Carl Lanore, for joining us this week. Dr. Tuliados, of course, thanks as always. Like the video, share the video, leave some comments, subscribe to the channel, give thumbs up, do all that good stuff. We appreciate it. And this has been another excellent episode of Ask Dr. Testosterone. We'll see you next time.